The title of this podcast is Watch the Voice Inside. And when you do, I want you to ask yourself a question. The question is it helpful? Almost always, that voice inside for me, when I am not observing it and I'm not present, it's hardly ever helpful. All it does is complain. I think about my career at Mayo Clinic over the last 5 years. And had I listened to it, it would have ruined a ton of things for me and for others. Fortunately, I have this practice, so I didn't listen to it. And I can think of everything that fits this topic at Mayo Clinic. One of the things that I would think about is I've had a couple individuals that I've worked with, only a few, in which my mind made it a problem, either their leadership style or something that they said or something. And fortunately, for most of those, I've had, my practice in place, so I stopped it in its tracks. But a few of those, I've had to ask my friends for a little help, and it's been incredibly helpful. Most recently, we started a community garden, and we've received incredible positive feedback around it. But there have also been some challenges that come from gardening too, and and let's just say that everyone is on a different part of the journey when it comes to the practice, whether they have a practice or they don't, and it shows up in different ways. And in this case, some of the conversation around it had the potential to get in the way of me experiencing joy, and it sounded like it was getting in the way of them experiencing joy too, because things weren't happening in the garden that were meeting expectations. As I mentioned before, I try not to have expectations. I have standards of how I want to show up, but I gave up having expectations of what other people need to do or should do for me to be okay inside. And the ego can find a way to justify having expectations of others. Like, I paid good money for this, or this is what we were promised. All of that doesn't change what the situation is right now. So I gave up having expectations for others because I've got no control over what they will do. I can't force the outcome to be what I want it to be. So I've given that up. But one thing I do have control over is I have control over how I respond to what happens. In this case, I heard the voice come up, and it was like, there's so much things to be grateful for with this. Like, as we seek to improve, let's think about how we communicate what we would like to see improved. And so that was my position, and has been my position along the way. And that's been helpful because the voice that I have was more interested, the voice inside was more interested in making other people wrong. It was more interested in finding fault with the way that people were communicating back to me, which none of that's helpful, because I want to be kind, and I want to be kind, I want to be loving, and I want to be unconditional about both of those things. So fortunately, I was able to watch the voice inside, and I was able to see that it wasn't going to be helpful to me. The same thing, as I mentioned, was with leadership. And most recently, I started taking up this game of pickleball, which I absolutely love playing. I love drilling, everything about it I love. And I was finding myself becoming, trying to get everybody to work on their game and remember everything to be a better player and to improve these skills. I mean, understanding that there's a process to it, but let's continue to work on it. And that may not be what other people want to do. And so the voice in my head was making me was saying things like, I wish they would drill more. If they would ask me to drill more, work on their game, it would be better, and all this other stuff. And then we all have fun, and things like that, without asking them, was that something that they were interested in, was working on their game. There's so many things that people, have going on in their lives. One more day of doing something may be too much, and maybe may not be enough time. But my voice was not interested in considering any of those possibilities. And it wasn't that the people that I was playing with were taken away from my experience. It's the voice in my head that was taking away from my experiences. And so it wasn't helpful. It was ruining a great thing. And so it took me about a week and a half to get leverage on it. The podcast we did about watching for the pop-ups, that certainly helped because I let go of a lot of that. And then most recently, I let it all go and of trying to facilitate the game in such a way that who invited and matching different people up based on the skill level. So everyone would have a great experience and it would be competitive for those who wanted to be competitive and for those who didn't want it to be competitive or improving their game wasn't at the top of the priority list. The fun part was more, which I can totally respect because the fun factor is important for me too, was I let go of managing all of that. Like it was gone. So I let that voice in my head go so that it wouldn't mess up a good thing that was going on with my enjoyment of this particular game. And it shows up in a lot of different ways too. You have this great experience at work. I mean, it's fantastic. If you could quiet that voice inside, you would see like, man, I got it good here. But the voice will ruin it. It will say things about like this colleague that I work with is a problem, or I'm not appreciated here, or this is being done to me. And if those things are legitimate, absolutely feel free to address them, hopefully in a constructive and peaceful way. But there's so much else, especially the place that I work, that's amazing. And my voice would ruin that. I have a colleague who I have a couple of colleagues, their voice in their head is ruining it for them. And so it's not helpful at all. But when you're so identified with those thoughts, it's hard to see any other possibilities. So I encourage you all to, and I'm saying this to myself, to watch the voice inside, to watch what it says about your partner and your loved ones. And is it going to make you miss out? Ask yourself, is this helpful for what I really want? And almost always the answer is no, it's not helpful. Now, the peaceful part of you, it doesn't talk. It just exists and shows up and creates openings for you to have the best experiences in life. And some of those experiences may involve, loss. It may involve an outcome not going the way that you might think it should go. But in those moments, there are opportunities to be more present, to open up more, to be loving, to be kind, and to be grateful. So even in those moments, there's something valuable to be had. So I ask yourself, look at that voice inside your head, like watch it, observe it, and ask yourself, is it helpful for what I really want? If you want to be more closely connected to people, to experience more joy, not to feel insecure or feel fearful or anxious or any of those things, then don't listen to that voice. Just observe it and let it pass right through. And I'm learning to do that more and more. And when I do, a lot less worry, a lot less obsessive thinking, and more joy and love and gratitude in my life.